Hello, 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 my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. It's Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement, but I do have books in it, so it's half of the equation. Anyway, welcome to the first live stream of Volume 2 of Golden Terrace. We've really been getting through Golden Terrace pretty quickly. It feels like we just started the first one. But here we are. Also just happy start of the week. I know it's Tuesday, so it's not exactly the start of the week, but close enough. I have not reviewed. I like to do little summaries. Oh, hi, Mo Mars Rover. How are you doing today? Did you have a good weekend? All right. Oh, good. I'm glad your weekend was lovely. How was mine? It was good. I mean, did normal things, went grocery shopping, cleaned bathrooms, cleaned up the house a little bit, took my dog for a walk. He was very happy about that one. I don't usually get to take him for a walk during the week. We've got a backyard with a fence, so he manages. But he always loves the weekend because I try to take him at least once a day on the weekend. So I did that. And I have a board game group I play with at least once a month. We try for twice a month, but life happens and sometimes that just doesn't happen. So that was a lot of fun. We played basically the sushi version of Catan, where instead of building houses or empire, we were trying to build sushi. So I like it. It's a little more whimsical than Catan. So that's nice. But yeah, I'm finally feeling better today. It took over 2 weeks, but I finally woke up not feeling nauseous. And no, I'm not having a baby. Just messed up digestive system. So I had a great day because of that. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's amazing what just feeling normal can do for your well-being. Like, just no matter what happened today, I was like, we're starting out right. So yeah. But I'm excited for this. It's always cool when we get to start a new book. And it seemed like in the end of the last book, we kind of learned a little more about Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan. And Yan Xiaohan were talking about the past a little bit and came to just kind of more of a clear understanding of each other and where they stood. And the one look and you interfered with the rest of my life. Fu Shen could interfere with his life, but he couldn't have interfered with Fu Shen's life. All right. Yan Xiaohan let him go and was just about to retreat when he suddenly paused, his collar seized out of nowhere. I'm really sorry for having interfered with the rest of your life. Fu Shen leaned back, relaxed, the corners of his lips turning up. Magnanimously, he said, "Come on, you can interfere back now." And that was how it ended. Which I really love this couple. They are so sassy. They are definitely their own persons. Like, they are independent, but they still have such a good relationship. Hi, Chi Chi Kiki. Welcome. I hope you've had a good start to your week and had a lovely weekend. Did you? Or at least had a good weekend, even if it wasn't lovely. You did? That's good to hear. We haven't started yet officially. I was just doing the usual summary sort of aspect. But we're about to start. Quick tea break. And we shall start with chapter 45. The 13th day of the 3rd month at daybreak. A servant came urgently to knock on the door of the main room. Inside, Yan Xiaohan was startled, and Fu Shen, seeming to sense something, also moved, then was gently embraced by Yan Xiaohan, who said vaguely, in a low, hoarse voice, "It's all right. Sleep." He put on some clothes and got up. With disturbed weariness all over his face, he went to open the door. "What is it?" The servant was smiling brightly. "A joyous occasion! Prince Qi Manor just sent someone to bring news. At 3:00 this morning, Princess Qi gave birth to a little commandery princess. Mother and daughter are both safe and sound." This really was a joyous occasion for the Fu family. Princess Qi had given birth to the eldest daughter of the first wife before any of the other concubines could give birth. While this wasn't a son, it was the first child of Prince Qi Manor, and in the future would presumably be a carefully cradled royal pearl. Yan Xiaohan woke up a little and told him to go reward the person who had brought the news, then to go pass on a message to the accountant to give the manor's servants an extra half-month of wages. After making the proper arrangements, he closed the door and turned around. But he saw that Fu Shen had entirely woken up at some point and was holding himself up in bed, trying to sit up. The quilt had slipped, his belt was loose, and his lapels were wide open, revealing a smooth, sturdy chest and muscles flashing in and out of sight. Worst of all was the speckling of red marks on his collarbones, floating down like a fallen red petal to his chest, irrefutable evidence left behind by a night of bliss. And the little siren who had enjoyed conjugal love with him had been unusually ardent and clinging, and had even sucked a mark onto the prominence of his throat. Oh, man. Fu Shen pulled himself up, but couldn't manage to sit upright. His whole waist seemed to have been pulled out of his body. He frowned and put a hand to his back. The movement was a little exaggerated. Yan Xiaohan immediately came over and, as if guarding against thieves, pulled up the quilt and wrapped Fu Shen up tightly and set him down. "Don't get up. Just lie back." Luckily, Fu Shen had just woken up and hadn't yet taken time to recall what had happened last night. He had only vaguely heard something about Princess Qi. Forcing his eyes to open, he asked, "What about Princess Qi?" "Congratulations, you're an uncle." Yan Xiaohan's dry, warm palm pressed against his forehead. "Princess Qi has given birth to a daughter. They just sent someone over to announce the good news." Fu Shen was immediately energized. "How is my sister?" "Don't worry. Mother and daughter are both safe and sound." Yan Xiaohan hung up his outer clothes and also lay back in bed, taking half of his quilt. With the two of them sharing one set of bedding, it seemed that the warmth and tenderness could make a person leap into dreams as soon as they closed their eyes. "It's still early. Go back to sleep. You can go to Prince Qi Manor to congratulate them when you wake up." The low whispers could only be heard between the two of them. The little universe surrounded by these bed curtains contained a particular kind of intimacy. In fact, there would be something different from now on. Yan Xiaohan pulled Fu Shen over and massaged his back. From soreness and numbness, the muscles gradually recovered sensation, and the absurdities all appeared at the same time. By the weak light coming in through the window, he bent his head and looked at his chest. Yan Mangue, were you born in the fucking year of the dog? Quiet laughter flowed past his ear, bringing with it a limpness that made the heart ache and itch. The contented sigh carried even more insatiability. Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan. Fu Shen pulled a long face. Go fuck yourself. No. Having had his wishes fulfilled, Yan Xiaohan was now one big demonstration of being spoiled by the certainty of favor. He maliciously spoke an obscenity into the ear. I only want to fuck you. Fu Shen expressionlessly slapped him. The skin-to-skin contact made a crisp sound, but there was only the slightest sting. Yan Xiaohan knew that this was an indulgence that he would never speak aloud, a small punishment to prevent further offenses, holding back his strength even if he hit him, just like last night, when he had knit his brows and panted, but hadn't once told him to stop. Oh boy, we'll see how explicit this gets. He involuntarily hugged him close, with a force that seemed as if he wanted to fuse their blood and bones together. Jing Yuan, I appreciate you going to the trouble. Stop showing off, Fu Shen said coldly. Why didn't I see this compassion when you were tormenting me last night? Next time, before pretending to be sorry in front of me, at least hide your wagging fox's tail. So there'll be a next time? Said Yan Xiaohan. No, said Fu Shen. Scram. Such a tsundere. He's giving Chu Wanning vibes a bit. Like, not as harshly, but I feel a bit of Chu Wanning in here. When he woke up again, the other side of the bed was empty. There was full daylight outside and the twittering of birds. Yan Xiaohan must have massaged his back for a long time. Fu Shen could finally sit up stiffly. He performed a close inspection and was almost frightened by the love bites and bruises on his body. It was honoring Yan Xiaohan beyond his deserts to say that he had been born in the year of the dog. He truly lived up to being part of the Feilong Guard. In this miserable state, he simply looked as though he had been in the North Prison's interrogation department. He definitely couldn't go out and see people like this. He vaguely remembered Yan Xiaohan saying there was ointment by the bed, so he reached out and pulled open a drawer to rummage around. He didn't find a medicine bottle, but instead he turned up a small sandalwood box. The box wasn't locked, and Fu Shen didn't think too much about it. His hand moved faster than his brain. He lifted the lid. 2 morning calm flower jade pendants lay side by side on a deep red brocade, one bright and clean as new, one broken and then inlaid with gold, just barely restored to its original form. He found, By a great coincidence, Fu Shen recognized both of these jade pendants. One he had gifted, and one he had broken. He had already learned about Kaiyue. At the time, he had felt a surge of emotion hard to subdue. He had already thought that was the upper limit of heartache, not expecting that another grip on his heart would now be added. No matter what aspect you looked at it from, Yan Xiaohan certainly didn't have a weak or passive character. He couldn't even be called good or honest. Well, good and honest. There's a difference. Only when it came to Fu Shen was he so careful that he feared to make a single move. When it came to his own bad habits, Fu Shen could pick out a whole list with his eyes closed. Bad-tempered, peremptory, ruthless when he ought to be lenient, but indiscriminately nice when he ought to not be lenient. As a teenager, he had moreover been ridiculously naive. Strictly speaking, it wasn't as if he had been entirely without blame in the situation back then, but in the long run, it had been Yan Xiaohan's losing sleep over it, being tormented. What had he ever done to deserve to be treasured like this? While he was lost in thought, light and steady footsteps came from the passage. Shortly, they had reached the door. Yan Xiaohan opened the door one-handedly, carrying a purple gold hair-binding crown. He walked in and said, "Jing Yuan, are you awake?" Fu Shen got up as though nothing were the matter. "Yes. What do you have there?" Yan Xiaohan put the crown on a small stool and brought Fu Shen's outer clothes, freshly perfumed, to the bedside. While helping him arrange them, he said, "Aren't you going to Prince Key's manor today? I just had them put together some gifts and find a crown for you while they were at it. You can't be dressed too plainly when going to pay a congratulatory visit." Fu Shen's waist was still sore. He leaned against him idly and suddenly said, "Come with me when I go." Yan Xiaohan's hand shook. He nearly fixed the crown crooked. He repeated in astonishment, "Come with you?" Visiting relatives together was a thing that only a genuine husband and wife would do. Though he and Fu Shen were husband and wife in name, and now in fact in the eyes of outsiders, theirs was only a false marriage. Princess Key probably wouldn't recognize him as a family member. Why did Fu Shen suddenly want to bring him along? Didn't he know what this meant? "You're going to Jingchu with Prince Key next month. You can say hello first," Fu Shen said. "Your family. You should get to know each other ahead of time." Family. Yan Xiaohan gently put his hands on his shoulders. In the not very clear bronze mirror, Fu Shen saw a helpless expression flash over his face. What? He said with a careless smile. "A newborn niece, and you as an aunt don't want to go see her?" "Oh, they're still doing the wife swap thing." Yan Xiaohan could clearly sense a change in Fu Shen's attitude. He didn't know whether it was the influence of last night's marital intercourse, but Fu Shen seemed to have thoroughly accepted him and entirely opened his arms to him. Before, while Fu Shen had also yielded and indulged on many points, he had very rarely taken the initiative to ask him to do anything, and the progress of their relationship had been limited to between the two of them, unknown by outsiders. But now he seemed to have at last been admitted by Fu Shen into the scope of his people. Yan Xiaohan surreptitiously took a deep breath, attempting to calm his chaotic heartbeat. "If you and I go visit together, aren't you worried Prince Key will misunderstand?" "Misunderstand what?" Fu Shen froze. Then he understood and flippantly pinched his cheek. Unable to suppress a smile, he said, "Our Lord Yan is pretty and virtuous, gentle and likable, naturally presentable, and fit for social occasions. Don't be scared. I'm not planning to keep you like a mistress in a love nest." "I can't." Yan Xiaohan knew that he had made a slip of the tongue and immediately stopped. Fu Shen's expression gradually turned serious. "What are you trying to say? Finish what you were saying." As soon as his grandeur came into play, Yan Xiaohan immediately shrank. Seeing him like this, what was there for Fu Shen not to understand? He felt affection and anger, and a sliver of dissatisfaction at expectations not met. Therefore, he said with a cold laugh, "Wonderful. Since when has the mighty imperial investigator and commander had a problem with feeling inferior?" He was too skilled at seizing the crucial point, hitting the target at the first strike. Yan Xiaohan was briefly stuck dumb, then finally said roughly, "Jing Yuan, I'm covered in muck myself. I can't. Fu Shen hit the table with a bang and sternly said, Yan Xiaohan, just try saying it and see what happens. He had just made him finish what he was saying, and now he wasn't letting him speak. It really was a little unreasonable. But Yan Xiaohan knew that he had already understood what he meant. He couldn't, from his own selfish interests, stain Fu Shen with dirty water. The Marquise of Jinning's clean name up until now couldn't be tarnished by a crafty sycophant like him. Though it sounded absurd, that was indeed what he thought. Fu Shen hadn't been wrong to say that he felt inferior. With such an undesirable background, censored even ever since childhood, growing up in such surroundings, one would either be deranged or willing to degrade oneself. Yan Xiaohan's current state already amounted to the outcome of utmost restraint. In fact, Fu Shen knew very well that Yan Xiaohan's sticking point lay in making too much of himself, and Fu Shen had been unable to give him an adequate sense of security. The difference in their positions was simply too great. The more you cared, the more worried you would be about personal gains and losses. While he couldn't keep himself from wallowing in it, he also couldn't keep himself from knowing that every bit of intimacy was stolen time. Living in this world, it was one thing not to be able to recklessly pursue your heart's desires. Yan Xiaohan also had to burn up his heart's blood like this. Born to the life of a treacherous official, he didn't have the disease of the treacherous official. Thinking about it like this, he really was rather pitiful. Fu Shen said, When His Majesty arranged the marriage between us, wasn't he planning on making you half a member of the Fu family by force, to pave the way for you to legitimately take over Beiyuan's military authority in the future? That being the case, shouldn't you be dedicating your efforts to making that reputation a reality? Why are you dodging and hiding instead, not daring to see people? Every word struck to the heart. Jing Yuan. Yan Xiaohan's expression looked as though he had stabbed him in the chest. He closed his eyes and earnestly said, You know I'm not doing this for military authority. Right. You're doing it for me, Fu Shen said. But when I want to be with you openly, you don't want it. Yan Xiaohan also got angry. You think this is what I want? A spotless national hero getting mixed up with a court's dog? Are you going to tell me that sounds good? Fine. I understand. Fu Shen laughed coldly, extremely angry. After all this talk, in Lord Yan's heart, I'm less important than a false reputation. Yan Xiaohan choked. Shortly, he sighed, his anger departing as quickly as it had come. He didn't want to argue with Fu Shen today. Consolidating, he said, Jing Yuan, do you think now that being with me will sully my reputation? Fu Shen wasn't taking the kindness, however. He suddenly raised his voice. You even sullied my person. Why didn't you think that it would come to this? Yan Xiaohan said nothing. Ancestor, I beg you, don't shout. Yan Xiaohan, I'm going to leave the conversation at this today. A marriage was arranged between us by the Emperor, our wedding presided over by the Ministry of Rights. We are legally married and vowed to heaven, earth, and the ancestors on Golden Terrace. Last night, we engaged in marital relations, and 100 years from now we'll fly on cranes to the Western Paradise together, and you will be buried with me. With rare solemnity, Fu Shen said, Husband and wife are one. There is no discussion of worthy or unworthy. Even when you go out this door, you can still openly call me your husband. The rims of Yan Xiaohan's eyes burned. He was both moved and amused. He couldn't cry, and he couldn't laugh. 100,000s of words came to his lips, and all turned into a sigh. To hear you say that, even if I should die on the spot, I would have no regrets. It's only that rumor and gossip kill invisibly. It's enough that my reputation alone is burdened. Listen to me. Don't pay with your reputation as well. It isn't worth it. Don't you understand what I just said? Fu Shen said categorically. Having you is enough. What would I want with an empty reputation? Alright, hang on. Tea time. See, I like that they feel like a real relationship. Like, they have issues, they have emotions, and then they talk it out and maybe understand and maybe misunderstand. But, like, they're very human. So I think I just really appreciate that aspect of them. All right. Chapter 46. Can Yan Xiaohan actually tripped over? It's nice that we get to see them argue. You're right, it humanizes them. It really does. Like, they're flawed and they get angry and they're not just, I love you, so I'm just gonna let it roll off my back. Like, they're like, no, we're gonna talk this out. Like, what's going on in that head of yours right now? Like, Yan Xiaohan actually tripped over his words, stuttering. Can you say that again? Fu Shen looked at him in great exasperation. Finally, after a long time, he sighed and reached his arms out to him. Come here. As if he didn't dare to use strength, Yan Xiaohan hugged him loosely. Say it again. Some words could be blurted out perfectly naturally, but if they were said again, they would change in flavor. Fu Shen was, for once, a little embarrassed. He blushed. Go on. Don't fool around. Yan Xiaohan hugged him a little tighter. Say it again. Have you been possessed by a manya bird spirit? Fu Shen twisted cleverly, slipping out of his hands. Stand aside. We're in a hurry to go see our niece. Don't make trouble. Lord Yan's arms were left empty. Disappointment showed clearly in his manner. Fu Shen carried on, straightening his lapels and cuffs, then suddenly said, Don't reproach yourself. Must have spent 3 lifetimes accumulating merit to have received the blessing of meeting you. No sooner had he spoken than he was pushed down by Yan Xiaohan onto the soft bedding. His strained back let out a sound, suggesting it wasn't up to bearing heavy burdens. Ooh, been there. I feel like when I sit up, like, in the morning, it's like... sounds like pop rocks. Yan Xiaohan looked down on him from on high, a crafty smile flowing through his eyes, like radiant stars sprinkled over a pitch-black sky. Fu Shen suddenly thought that perhaps Yan Xiaohan really was a fox from deep in the mountains who had cultivated a human form. Every bit of his countenance exquisite and beautiful, yet there was nothing feminine about it. The corners of his mouth were seductive, and so were the slightly curved corners of his eyes. Even his slightly curled eyelashes made an arc that looked ready to be kissed. Like a sigh, he said, so long as you feel as I do. Fu Shen, held down like prey caught by a wild beast, unexpectedly didn't feel awkward. Perhaps because he knew in his heart that this person wouldn't hurt him no matter what. He even felt at leisure to raise his hand to pinch his cheek. Even his fingertips were gentle. I really don't understand it. Look at you, wealthy and handsome, in a high position with great power, boundless future prospects. How could you still think no one would like you? Surrounded by gems, it's easy to know your own vulgarity. Yan Xiaohan squeezed his hand and affectionately nuzzled his cheek. It's because you're too good. Not only in external things like family background and position, what made it really hard to compare to Fu Shen were his mind and character. Yan Xiaohan had been contemptuous, doubtful, but having weathered the elements, he knew that he could never do what Fu Shen did. An upright gentleman was like the splendor of the moon. You might not be able to meet one in a whole lifetime. He had only watched from afar, never daring to entertain the extravagant hope that the moon in the highest heaven would one day land in his embrace. Fu Shen laughed in spite of himself. Just which one of us has bewitched the other? All right, get up. We still have to go to Prince Qi Manor to congratulate them. I'll remember this and settle the accounts with you when we get back. Yan Xiaohan said, There are still accounts to settle? What did you think? Fu Shen smiled slyly. If I don't give you a severe seeing to, I don't think you'll remember who has the final word in this house. Yan Xiaohan didn't respond. Quick sip. Prince Qi Manor. Prince Qi Sun Yun Duan, hearing that the uncle had come, quickly went to the front hall himself to welcome their guest, not expecting that he would first come face to face with Yan Xiaohan. He froze on the spot. Lord Yan, Marquis Fu. Congratulations, Your Highness, Fu Shen said, cupping his hands, on the happy occasion of the birth of your daughter. Prince Qi automatically returned the salute and recovered from the head-on attack. Putting a smile on his face, he said, Thank you. Please come in and sit down, both of you. Fu Shen had, in fact, had little contact with Prince Qi. In his position, it wasn't a good thing to get too close to anyone. So even though Prince Qi was his relative relation by marriage, they still didn't visit each other regularly. The two of them were unusually distant when they met. At this time, his foresight became obvious. After all his time in the palace, Yan Xiaohan had long ago developed the ability to speak to everyone in their own language. Seeing that Fu Shen didn't speak, he understandably took over the subject of conversation. Prince Qi was quite respectful towards Fu Shen. When it came to Yan Xiaohan, only dread remained to him. The Feilong Guard were His Majesty's personal guards, and Yan Xiaohan was naturally His Majesty's man. Though he didn't know why he had taken the unprecedented action of coming to visit with Fu Shen, it obviously wasn't for the sake of delivering congratulations. Prince Qi had already been worried about Emperor Yuntai arranging for the two of them to go to Jingchu together. Now he let his imagination roam even further, involuntarily slipping into official jargon as he spoke. One was focused outward, and one was focused inward. The apportionment of work evident as they tacitly cooperated, and Fu Shen didn't care now for the dignity and self-respect of a husband. Carefree and unhurried, he looked at the wrinkly little baby, then asked about Fu Ling's condition. He looked back and, wow, in the cool spring breezes of the third month, His Highness Prince Qi had started to sweat. He glanced at Yan Xiaohan with a smile, indicating for him not to go overboard. Yan Xiaohan understood his signals perfectly. In a few words, he turned the subject to household chatter. Fu Shen didn't lose time interjecting. We're all family, so we won't stand on formalities. In the trip to Jingchu next month, I'll rely on your highness to put up with and look after this fellow for me. Prince Qi couldn't work out right away what kind of looking after he was talking about. He was stuck. Then he forced a smile and said, You overstate matters, Marquis Fu. In these distant travels, it ought to be me relying on Lord Yan. this fellow. Without a vast difference in position, what man would be willing to acknowledge himself in the position of a first wife? While Great Zhou permitted marriage between men, the country still belonged to the husbands. Prince Qi guessed that when he had arranged this marriage, Emperor Yuntai had intended to have Fu Shen in the role of the wife. In saying such a thing in front of him now, did Fu Shen mean it to be an insult to Yan Xiaohan's dignity or a slap in the face to Emperor Yuntai? When his doubtful reaction appeared before the two of them, Fu Shen felt rather regretful, while Yan Xiaohan could hardly resist feeling delight at his suffering. He gave a dry laugh and said, "Your Highness and the Princess have both had had it hard, and we've taken up a lot of your time. We'll be taking our leave now." Prince Qi wanted them to fuck off as soon as possible. He delivered a few hypocritical civilities and finally got the two great... Hang on, I'm trying to get back on. All right, I'm going to... Okay, I think I fixed it. Did I fix it? I think I fixed it. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry. I had to go and reset both modems. We have extender, so I just in case reset that too. So it should be better. All right. Just then, Fu Ling woke up. I'll restart back. When his doubtful reaction appeared before... I'll go back a little bit just in case. When his doubtful reaction appeared before the two of them, Fu Shen felt rather regretful, where Yan Xiaohan could hardly resist feeling delight at his suffering. He gave a dry laugh and said, "Your Highness and the Princess have both had it hard, and we've taken up a lot of your time. We'll be taking our leave now." Prince Qi wanted them to fuck off as soon as possible. He delivered a few hypocritical civilities and finally got the two great divinities out the door. When he returned inside, taking no care for his deportment, he plopped down and gave a weary sigh. Just then, Fu Ling woke up and said in concern, "What's wrong, Your Highness?" "Your big brother, is he—" Prince Key hesitated, then haltingly asked, "Really a cut sleeve?" Fu Ling immediately said, "Of course not. If he'd really been of the Long Yang proclivity, then that would have saved trouble. What need would there have been for him to wait for his majesty to arrange him a marriage and let that court lackey bully him?" Seeing that she was truly angry, Prince Key quickly restrained her and soothed. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. I was only asking. It's just that they came together to visit today, and Marquise Fu said something suggestive, so my thoughts went awry." Fu Ling thumped on the bed hatefully. "Must be that horrid Yang forcing him." Well, we'll see if she figures stuff out eventually. Yan Manor. Fu Shen changed clothes and let down his hair. He asked casually, "What do you think of Prince Key as a person?" Yan Xiaohan coiled a strand of hair around his finger, thought about it briefly, and then said, "Sticks to established practices, overcautious in small matters." "Yes," Fu Shen said, "and he has his father's excessive suspicion. Come to think of it, that niece of mine doesn't look like her mother, but she looks quite a lot like Prince Key. The chin and the eyes are identical, huh?" He suddenly stopped talking and reached out to pinch Yan Xiaohan's chin and examine it from all angles. "I've just realized that your chin is also a lot like theirs." Yan Xiaohan responded with nonsense. "Don't they say that marriages are predestined? We were meant to be family." Fu Shen laughed. "So now we're family again? Who was it that just pitched a fit, unwilling to go out and see people dead or alive?" Yan Xiaohan, trying to get out of it, kissed him on the lips. "A great man can afford to be broad-minded, Lord Marquise. Don't squabble with me, How pathetic. General Fu was hard-hearted, remaining unmoved. "Let's have none of that. I'll make sure to give you something to remember today." He casually grabbed a book off the small bedside stand and tossed it to Yan Xiaohan. This was a thin volume with an indigo cover whose label said the name of the book. Essays from the Zhu Mei Temple. Zhu Mei Temple. Yan Xiaohan was bewildered. He casually flipped open to a page and took a cursory glance through it, then was instantly awed by the words, "The nation belongs to all. Tyrants are traitors to the people," written in the essay. "I'm not mistaken?" He flipped back to the cover and looked at the name of the author. "There's a banned book hidden in the home of the Phelan Guard's imperial investigator. Lord Marquise, where did you get this?" "That's none of your business," Fu Shen said. "I'll just ask you. Last winter, after I returned to Beiyuan, the Phelan Guard conducted a case at the Kuangshan Academy. Yes or no?" Yan Xiaohan thought back to it. Here I was thinking this wise gentleman seemed familiar. Turns out it was him. This former wise gentleman was the respected teacher who instructed Gu Shenlue, Imperial Censor Gu. "I owe Imperial Censor Gu a favor for the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission case. While his teacher has violated a prohibition, his crime doesn't merit death. Having spent this long in prison, he's suffered enough. So I wanted to ask you to intercede. Could you be magnanimous and release this old gentleman? Yan Xiaohan's eyes slowly turned cold. Jing Yuan. He cast down his eyes to look at the writing on the page. Have you really forgotten, or are you deliberately reminding me? Fu Shen said, What did you say? The Jin Yunfang case. Yan Xiaohan raised his eyes. His gaze unexpectedly seemed to have been dipped in snow and ice. What? After 7 years, you still want to test me with a case just like that? Aren't you afraid I'll revert to my old ways and stab you in the back again? Ordinarily, had anyone dared to speak to him like that, Fu Shen would have boxed their ears for them by now. But today he was extraordinarily calm and collected. He didn't get angry, only evenly said, You're overthinking it. I wasn't trying to test you. I only wanted to ask for something. Can't I? Yan Xiaohan said irritably, No, you can't ask for something on behalf of another man. Fu Shen nearly lost his temper. Forcing himself to hold back, he said, It's give and take. I'll compensate you. How will you compensate me? Said Yan Xiaohan. I'll give you 2 morning calm flower jade pendants, Fu Shen said. If you help me with this, those 2 pendants will act as vouchers, each one representing a favor. If you command, I will be sure to comply. What do you say to that? As if a bolt of lightning had struck him on his head out of the blue, Yan Xiaohan went rigid. His consciousness seemed to float out of his body. He vacantly listened to himself numbly ask, Apart from the one you sent me last year, the other one. Which do you mean? Wu Shen quoted his words back to him. The Jin Yunfang case. What? After 7 years, don't you remember? He knew everything. The slack gaze gradually focused. Fu Shen's image came clear in his eyes, bit by bit, then was carved in perfect, lifelike detail at the bottom of his heart, like the descent of a hurricane, sweeping away all past wounds with unmatched force. The regret and dejection shut away from the sun were at last lit up by bright light, then instantly dispersed like clouds breaking up before a strong wind. To be struck dumb several times in one day was an unprecedented experience for Yan Xiaohan. In this instant, he suddenly understood the reason behind all of Fu Shen's words and actions since this morning. Fu Shen had given himself to him, and he was also offering up his whole heart with both hands. There was no question of who was first and who was last, or who didn't deserve whom. This was a predestined opportunity, ordained by fate. They were a match made in heaven. Yan Xiaohan's breathing suddenly became rapid. When he opened his mouth, his voice was as hoarse as though there was grit in his throat. There was even a fine tremor in his voice. Then, it's settled? Yes, smiling, Fu Shen repeated. If you command, I will be sure to comply. Okay. Chapter 47, quick tea break. I'm also checking on my new candle because those posters do have a habit of falling, and all I need right now is to start a fire in my basement. If that ever does happen, where something catches on fire, please do tell me. I'd hope I'd notice, but I can be oblivious sometimes. Alright. Chapter 47. A traveler's pavilion in the capital's outskirts. The mountain flowers were in full bloom, and the willows were rustling, but sadly those leaving from the pavilion and those seeing them off were few. Among them was an old man whose hair and beard were all white and who had a weary look. This was Cheng Guang, who had been recently released from the imperial prison. With the support of his student Gu Shanlue, He faced the man sitting in the wheelchair and, tottering, bowed deeply. Fu Shen quickly reached out to indicate for him to get up. "There's no need for this, Mr. Cheng." Cheng Guang said, "Had you not stepped in to uphold justice, my poor old bones would have rotted in the imperial prison. One must extend gratitude for a life saved." "Certainly not," Fu said, smiling. "Heaven helps the worthy like you, and you have a good student in Officer Gu. I only said a few words. The one who really did the work was the one at home. I truly do not dare to take credit." Fu Shen had heard of the Kuang Shan Academy case, and he had known a few things about Cheng Guang himself. As a child, he had become famous in his village for being a prodigy. After passing the imperial examinations, he had been assigned to be the local magistrate in a certain prefecture, but he had been suppressed by his superiors and had never been transferred or promoted. Cheng Guang had a temperament as potent as flame. He had resigned from his office and left, returning to his hometown, no longer setting foot in government halls. He had concentrated on scholarship for many years, his essays becoming famous throughout the country. But his words had been violent, pointing out the social ills of the day, often classified as a departure from the classics and a rebellion against orthodoxy. We all know how that goes in Danmei. Last winter, because the view that the nation belongs to all, put forth in essays from Zhu Mei Temple, had been reported by designing people. Disturbing the court, Cheng Guang had been thrown in prison on the charges of disrespect to the court and spreading fallacies to deceive the people. Kuangshan Academy had always been prone to inciting disturbances, while rarely doing anything in fact. After Cheng Guang had gone to prison, the academy's hundreds of students had scattered like birds and beasts. His relatives and old acquaintances had avoided him like poison. Gu Shenlue alone had gone to intercede on his behalf, but his position was too lowly for his words to carry much weight, and his actions had produced few results. But perhaps because Cheng Guang's life wasn't meant to end now, or perhaps because there was some obscure divine will, his article had suited Fu Shen's tastes, and Fu Shen had had some impression of him. Besides that, the Kuangshan Academy case had just happened to take place on New Year's Eve last year, so it had been put off until this year. When the year had turned, it had been quickly followed by the vast longevity festival. Only when Fu Shen had struck up a conversation with Gu Shanlue had he learned that Cheng Guang was his teacher. Fu Shen had already known the truth of the Jing Yunfeng case by then, and he had been looking for a reason to explain it fully to Yan Xiaohan. You could just say, like, "Hey, I found and now understand you better because I found the person you helped and are a decent person, even if you're pretending not to be. But, I mean, at least somebody else prospered from it." By coincidence, he had just happened upon the Shan Academy case. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan were vital to his fate. Had these two gentlemen not insisted on playing a romantic game, old Mr. Cheng would have been squatting in prison indefinitely. What did I say? After Yan Xiaohan had agreed to Fu Shen's request, he had originally planned to fake Cheng Guang's death to let him escape as well, but then on the 4th day of the 4th month, a sudden snow had fallen in the capital. The whole city had been silvered and dressed in white, disturbing even Emperor Yuntai deep in the palace. Since fainting during the vast longevity festival, Emperor Yuntai had been in ill health. Court assemblies had been changed to once every 3 days, with Yinghua Hall assisting in affairs of state. The Court of Imperial Physicians had tried all kinds of treatments, but there had been no improvement. It was only when this heavy snow fell that everyone had a sudden realization. Perhaps His Majesty had acted in defiance of the natural order, bringing down a warning from heaven upon himself, commanding him to examine his conscience. It wasn't only the ministers who thought this. Even Emperor Yuntai himself believed it. Sick as he was, he went in person to the imperial ancestral temple to worship. Yan Xiaohan had struck while the iron was hot, finding an opportunity during an audience with the emperor to mention the Kuangshan Academy case. As expected, his words had moved Emperor Yuntai's heart. The next day, he had issued a merciful decree granting a general pardon. Now Yan Xiaohan had already gone south with Prince Qi, and Fu Shen had deliberately come to accompany Chang Guang, not just to give him a send-off, but also so he could brag about Yan Xiaohan's contributions in front of these literary folks. The words, "the one at home," hit Imperial Censor Gu so hard that he saw stars. He pursed his lips as if he had had a toothache. No matter what, it is because the Lord Marquis and Lord Yan devised a means of rescue that my teacher was able to escape death. He also saluted Fu Shen. You two are virtuous and righteous people, and have my undying gratitude. I must do something to repay this debt of gratitude. Fu Shen joked. When my humble wife heard before leaving that I was going to give Mr. Cheng a send-off, he particularly asked me to pass along a message. There's no need to repay the debt. He only hopes that in the future the two of you can be merciful in your words, not criticize the court's dog too often. That will be tough to satisfy him. The Empire's scholars had always denounced the Feilong Guard by word and brush, abhorring them, especially old gentlemen like Cheng Guang. He had thought that Fu Shen had seen an injustice and engaged in a lengthy battle of wits and courage with the Feilong Guard in order to rescue him and let him see the light of day. He'd never expected that the Marquis of Jinning's every other sentence would be about that court lackey, even giving him all the principal credit. Had the world changed altogether while he had been in prison? If a person was devoted to goodness and not killing innocents, could he still be called a Feilong Guard? Ooh, that's rough. Ooh. Imperial Censor Gu saw more clearly than he did. Seeing that his teacher was still shocked and perplexed, he gave Fu Shen a helpless smile and said, "Then please pass along mine and my teacher's thanks to Lord Yan for lending a hand, Lord Marquis." Seeing that he was very willing to go along with it, Fu Shen nodded in satisfaction. Of course. It was getting late. Gu Shanlua helped Cheng Guang to a carriage and bade farewell to his teacher. After watching him recede into the distance, he said goodbye to Fu Shen and returned to the city on horseback, while Fu Shen got into a carriage and headed in another direction, toward the villa on Mount Changli. It was a perfect spring day with the warm, damp scent of grass in the wind. It was a perfect time for a springtime outing. Sadly, while the flowers were before his eyes, the one who would scruple to pick the flowers wasn't. He's missing his hubby or wife. I don't know. Now Yan Xiaohan had gone to Jingchu. There was no point in Fu Shen staying in the manor in the capital alone. So he had simply moved to the villa to convalesce again. Yu Xiao Ting and Xiao Shun had long since returned with their people to Beiyuan, and now only a small number of servants to do the rough work remained in the manor. He was only too glad to be idle. He floated lazily through the days. But that night, a tightly covered wagon suddenly stopped at the manor's gate. The carriage's curtain was lifted aside, revealing a big box. In the firelight, the cold light of black iron seemed to flash at the corners of the box. Uh-oh. Outside of Jingshou, in the wilderness, This place was about a 2-day trip from Jingshou. Prince Key's party had left the Henshan post station in the early morning, originally intending to reach the next post station that evening. But a strong rain began and the river rose dramatically, flooding the road they were to have taken. They were forced to change the road that they would have taken. They were forced to change their route, but the rain became stronger and stronger, almost to the point that it was impossible to advance. The rain was misty, and the sound of it filled the space between heaven and earth. I mean, honestly, that sounds nice, although it wouldn't be if you were out in it. But anyway, the rain was misty, and the sound of it filled the space between heaven and earth. They nearly lost their way. At last, they fortunately found a debilitated temple in the wilderness that could still shield them from the elements. Yan Shaohan oversaw the bedraggled Prince Key's dash into the temple's main hall. Saw that the divine statue was destroyed and dust and spider webs were everywhere. But the building was still holding on. He breathed a sigh of relief. The attendants braved the rain and found half of a broken gate in the rear courtyard to serve as kindling. They then started a fire. With a fire and hot water, the panic of rushing through the rain gradually faded. Yan Shaohan methodically ordered people to gather up their bundles and dry provisions and prepare to spend the night, and arranged the night watches. His figure standing against the light at the door was inexplicably comforting. While Prince Key was a pampered child of royalty, he was still quite good at roughing it. After changing out of his wet clothes, he was still in the mood to hold a container of hot water while walking deeper in to examine the dust-covered divine statue. Seeing this, Yan Shaohan walked over and said, "Your Highness?" "Lord Yan," said Prince Key. "Do you know what god is worshipped in this temple?" Yan Shaohan narrowed his eyes slightly and took a close look. He could only distinguish that the clay statue had a tall wooden hair coil and long eyes and brows. It seemed to be a female immortal. He humbly said, "Please enlighten me, Your Highness." "The better half of the plaque on the door is damaged, but you can still make out what it says," Prince Key said, pointing it out to him. "It's a fan immortal." "Hey, hey! Like a windmaster?" Yan Shaohan had grown up in a Buddhist sect, but he had never heard of a fan immortal, whose name used a character for Buddhism. Involuntarily doubtful, he said, "What kind of divinity is that?" Prince Key said, smiling, "Fan immortal is another name for a fox immortal. In fact, this temple is consecrated to a fox immortal." Huh. I wonder if that might be why he's so gender fluid in Heaven Official's Blessing. Because fox spirits were known to be shapeshifters and tricksters and seductresses. So I wonder if that has any bearing. This is just speculation. I have no idea if MXTX had any bearing on that. But I'm just curious because that'd be an interesting connection. Aren't they afraid of worshipping woodland spirits and monsters instead of worshipping Buddhas and bodhisattvas? Bodhisattva. I know I'm saying that wrong and I'm so sorry. Bodhisattvas. It's one of those words that I just can't say. I'm sorry. What he said was, "I suppose a fox immortal must have worked a miracle here, causing the people to build a temple to worship it." Prince Key said, "The records of the ancients say no village will rise without a fox spirit. It's normal for common people to worship fox immortals. Since there is a fox immortal temple here, I suppose it wouldn't be too far from a village. I know that fox immortals also were commonly associated with grain, usually rice. So they would be a harvest deity at that point too. Yan Shouhan nodded, then said to him, "Your Highness is of true imperial stock. Monsters and ghouls will automatically avoid you. You need only rest. Worry not." Because of the strange phenomenon of the heavy rain earlier that day, Prince Qi was ready to trust in the tales of gods and spirits, though from Yan Shouhan's manner, while he had these soothing words ready at hand as soon as he opened his mouth, he actually didn't believe it himself. But it was precisely that courage that made him think that this debilitated temple wasn't all that unendurable. Compared to a crafty sycophant who could at a stretch be counted as his brother-in-law, ghosts and spirits were still a little scarier. That's a little harsh. Because it was pouring rain outside shortly before evening, it was already so dark that they could hardly see anything. They had brought sufficient dry provisions and drinking water and weren't afraid of staying the night. What Yan Shouhan was most worried about was a sizable lake not far from the temple. While the Fox Immortal Temple stood on high ground, he was still afraid that the torrential rain would cause the water level to rise and flood in the middle of the night. While he was lost in thought, there was a splashing sound in the distance, as if something was wading wildly through the water. The sound came closer and closer. Yan Shouhan focused and listened closer. As expected, shortly after, a figure wearing a bamboo hat appeared in the rain, charging towards the debilitated temple they were in. In an instant, that person was right in front of him. The bamboo hat covered his face. He wore a black robe without design or ornamentation and had a long cloth pack on his back that seemed to contain a sword. He sat astride a horse that was all skin and bones. Dripping wet, he loudly called to Yan Shouhan. "Friend, the rain has made the road slippery and hard to travel. Allow me to temporarily take shelter here with you. Thank you. Thank you." With a clank, Yan Shouhan's sword came out of its sheath and blocked the horse's way, glinting with cold light. The man was startled and quickly reining in his horse and nearly fell off. Yan Shouhan's slightly cold voice spoke through the rain, a little indistinct. "Sorry, I can't allow that." The man froze, then shortly afterward cried out in disbelief. "What did you say?" "I said, go find somewhere else," Yan Shouhan said immovably. "There's no place for you to rest here." Prince Qi was inside. Who knew where this person came from? Even if he got soaked to death innocently in the rain, he still couldn't let him in. The man tried reasoning with him. "Big brother, we're both wanderers brought down to miserable straits. In this wilderness, where do you want me to find another place to get out of the rain? Make an exception. I'm not going to do anything. I'll leave as soon as the rain stops, or I can pay you." He motioned, reaching for his wallet. Yan Shouhan still said unfeelingly, "No." "Why are you still not convinced?" The man didn't even get out his money. He said irritably, "Did your family build this temple? Or did the great immortal inside the temple hire you to be a watchdog? How much are your monthly wages? I'll double them." Yan Shouhan was silent. Without knowing it, he'd hit him in a sore spot. Yan Shouhan's eyes turned slightly cold. His fingers gripped the hilt of his sword and his wrist lowered. The rain formed a silver thread like flowing water at the tip of his sword. Alright, hang on. Feels like the chapters are going quickly today. Alright, chapter 48. Rain poured down the brim of the bamboo hat, as if veiling the man's face. He glimpsed Yan Shouhan's slight motions, and his eyebrows rose. He reached behind him to feel for the long cloth pack on his back. Just then, a shout like the call of nature came from the hall, interrupting the animosity between the two of them. At the crucial moment, Prince Qi called out, "No need to block his way. Let him in." Before Yan Shouhan could answer, the man drew back his hand as quickly as when he had been feeling for his wallet and clamored, "You hear that? You hear that? The great immortal has spoken. Do not get in my way. Let me in. When this person spoke, it was like 10 mina birds all clamoring into your ear in unison, as he made a racket in his hoarse voice. Yan Xiaohan was awfully annoyed and very unwillingly put his sword away. When the man jumped off his horse, his sensitive ears suddenly caught a crisp sound, like metal knocking together. It was a bang with a distant echo that lingered uninterrupted for a long time. He immediately looked up and fixed his eyes on the man, who candidly came towards him. Meeting his gaze, the mouth beneath the bamboo hat curved in a slightly flippant smile. When the two of them brushed shoulders, Yan Xiaohan suddenly reached back, grabbing and yanking. He swiftly snatched away the cloth bundle on his back. The man's reaction was also very quick. Almost at the same time as Yan Xiaohan acted, he grasped the other end of the bundle. As he moved, his bamboo hat slipped down, revealing the plain, unremarkable face beneath it. Grouchily asked, "What are you doing?" "Surrender your sword," Yan Xiaohan said expressionlessly. The man's expression was baffled. "Surrender my sword? What sword?" Yan Xiaohan's gaze moved downward onto the cloth bundle both of them held. When the man saw this, he immediately laughed easily. "You mean this? This isn't a sword. Open it." The young man shook his head. This was a deliberately assumed elderly exasperation in his manner. There was a deliberately assumed elderly exasperation in his manner. "Putting on an act," he said. "Well, if you really want to see, then all right." Yan Xiaohan skeptically watched as he undid the cloth bundle in a few rapid movements, unwinding round after round of cloth strips, revealing a blackened, almost yard-long club. Yan Xiaohan had no words. Very innocently, the man asked, "I told you it wasn't a sword. You insisted on looking." The attendants in the room, who had witnessed the scene, all covered their mouths and lowered their heads, struggling to hold back laughter. Yan Xiaohan at least managed to keep his cool. Flatly, he said, "Give it here. You can't bring it in." "You had to bow your head beneath the roof." The man didn't insist. He eased his grip. Before going in, he only quietly murmured, "Petty. Won't even let a club get past him." Yan Xiaohan, repeatedly exercising patience, at last condescended to let him in. At the same time, he felt a faint sense of strangeness. This man seemed very young, but there was an old drifter's unconstraint about him and an indiscernible slickness in his direct gaze. Yan Xiaohan's repeated attempts to sound him out were deflected without leaving a trace. He seemed to have determined in advance that he would succeed in entering this debilitated temple. So even when Yan Xiaohan had drawn a sword on him and barred his way, he hadn't been really angered. Instead, from beginning to end, he had taken every opportunity to mock him. This manner of speaking, keeping within the bounds but drawing blood with every prick, was really very familiar. He shook his head, thinking that perhaps he really had lost his mind. It was probably because he had ushered in a prolonged separation right after getting a taste of sweetness that he couldn't resist thinking of Fu Shen, no matter what he saw. Oh. Compared to the evident detestation on Lord Yan's face, Prince Qi and the attendants were all very friendly and welcoming towards the young man they had met by chance. While Yan Xiaohan had briefly been lost in thought and taken his eyes off him for a moment, the man had already sat down by the fire. While stretching out his limbs and warming himself by the fire, he talked in an endless, assured stream. The inexperienced Prince Qi was listening with great interest. "My surname is Ren. My given name, the single character Miao, the one consisting of 3 water characters. My fortune lacks water. I come from Yanshou. I started traveling up and down when I was 16, doing chivalrous works everywhere. Parents, My late parents died early deaths. I grew up on public charity. I lived in the capital for a while, working as retainer and guard for a merchant. He smiled awkwardly. Sometimes I also helped out the neighbors, and so I took a liking to that family's young mistress. Yan Xiaohan sneered inwardly, but Prince Qi was particularly fond of these kinds of love stories, which was more moving than a novel or an opera. He pursued with interest. And then what? Ren Miao drank a mouthful of warm water and continued. Their business in the capital failed, so they let their house packed up and returned to their hometown in Jingzhou. Prince Qi sighed with feeling. Too bad, too bad. It's not too bad, Ren Miao said with an easy smile. Haven't I come to find her? Saying so, he turned his head to take a glance at Yan Xiaohan, a glance that bewildered Lord Yan. You carry on chasing the one you love, he thought. What are you doing looking at me? Showing off that you have a beloved? Prince Qi asked. What is this family's name? What is their business? Are you certain she's in Jingzhou? What if they have gone elsewhere? Their surname is Meng. They're cloth merchants, said Ren Miao. Leaving the capital to go to Jingzhou was arranged by her family elders. As an unmarried woman, there was nothing she could do. She could only send a maid to bring me a letter in secret. Prince Qi said involuntarily. You mean that your feelings are mutual? Ren Miao said, naturally. Otherwise, if it was only my own wishful thinking, what would I be doing coming all the way out to chase after her? Though she hasn't said as much openly, she must be looking forward to seeing me. I can't let her down. Once these words were spoken, the listeners all paused, especially those who were married. They were deeply touched. Yan Xiaohan had been rather prejudiced against him, disliking his nonsense and slippery tongue, but his heart was moved by the unexpected, can't let her down. The longing he was using all his power to control, like water breaching its banks, controllably overflowed in his heart and his eyes. After a long silence, Yan Xiaohan said, Enough. Don't stain the young lady's pure reputation here. Ren Miao turned his head to give him another look and defiantly said, Big brother, you look very imposing to me. I suppose you're already married? Yan Xiaohan gave a cold and restrained nod and asked, You come from Yanshou. Have you heard of the Beiyuan cavalry's commander, the Marquis of Jinning Fushen? Of course I have. Who hasn't heard of him? Ren Miao said carelessly. You aren't trying to tell me you're married to the Marquis of Jinning. Forgive me for being blunt, big brother, but you'll burst from blowing that much hot air. Ha 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 ha. There was silence. Why are you all looking at me? Ren Miao asked awkwardly. Yan Xiaohan forced his emotions to calm and said, I was saying, since you were in Beiyuan, why didn't you enlist in the Beiyuan cavalry and win military honors for yourself? Then grandly take this Miss Meng of yours to wife. If you go to Jingzhou now, even if you come to the door and make a proposal of marriage, they might not be willing to give you their daughter. Joining the army is no good, he shook his head and said, smiling. I'm an unambitious man. I don't want to have a distinguished career. I only want to live out my life with my beloved in peace and quiet. I can respect that. I can earn food and clothing with my own abilities now, enough to keep a family. If I joined the army, I don't know whether I would come back alive. If I cast her out into the world all alone, I wouldn't be able to close my eyes in death. This person had simply been sent by heaven to jab at Yan Xiaohan's weak points, each jab hitting its mark. Yan Xiaohan was about to start throwing up blood from his jabbing. Not giving up, he asked, How did you know this Miss Meng didn't want a phoenix coronet, an embroidered cape, to receive a noble title after your death and only wants to live in poverty with you? Ren Miao bent his leg. A somewhat bashful but sentimental smile appeared in his eyes. As if to himself, he said, "She isn't that kind of person. Or else, when there are so many people in this world, why would she have fallen in love with me out of all of them?" This warmth that couldn't be concealed was nearly scalding to the eyes. Yan Xiaohan felt half frustrated, half bitter. What Ren Miao was speaking were the deepest regrets and unattainable desires in his heart. But he and Fu Shen were a noble and a minister in a high position. Even if they weren't attached to power and position, how could they cast everything aside without a thought? Just up and leave. The passing years were weighed down by compulsion. Bobbing in the mundane dust, they might as well be weighed down until they were past their prime. Ren Miao shot a glance at the blank-faced Yan Xiaohan. The light in his eyes flashed, and he unhurriedly changed the subject. "Where do you all come from? Are you also going to visit family and friends?" Yan Xiaohan didn't speak. Prince Qi braced himself and undertook answering, saying, "Yes, we come from the capital. We're going to visit family in Jingshou." He didn't elaborate, and Ren Miao tactfully didn't follow up. He only said, "What a coincidence. Maybe we'll meet again in Jingshou City. I'll have to treat you all to a meal then." At nightfall, the force of rain slackened slightly. Ren Miao had dried his clothes beside the fire and, opting for shamelessness, asked them for a meal. After eating and drinking his fill, he picked up a pile of straw and built himself a makeshift bed in a corner and went comfortably to sleep. Yan Xiaohan had arranged the night watchers. Passing by the corner, he kept his footsteps very soft, but Ren Miao, who ought to have been dreaming, twitched the tips of his ears. His eyelids rose as well. Their gazes just happened to meet. Instantly, an indescribable shudder entered the top of Yan Xiaohan's head. Countless fragments quickly flitted through his mind. He had a distinct sensation, but he couldn't catch the illumination that flashed past and then was gone. Seeing that it was him, Ren Miao closed his eyes as though nothing were the matter. Yan Xiaohan was full of doubts, and he was still concerned about the force of the rain outside, so he didn't sleep very soundly that night. In the small hours of the morning, the sounds of dull thunderclaps came from above. He woke with a start from the shallow sleep. As soon as he opened his eyes, he found that someone was already standing at the door. All the hairs on the back of his neck were standing upright. His first reaction was go for the sword next to him, but the person turned and walked towards him. "Awake? I was just going to wake you. Get up and take a look. I kept thinking there's something wrong with this thunder." Only in this half-reclining posture did Yan Xiaohan discover that Ren Miao was actually very tall, and his legs were particularly long. While he wasn't being flippant, his face unexpectedly looked very steady and dependable. They went out the door of the temple. The rain was already very light, but the dense clouds in the sky had yet to disperse. Instead, they were gathering thicker and thicker, with lightning flashing through them, and lightning and thunder rumbling. The lightning and thunder were right above their heads. Every time the lightning tore through the sky, even the debilitated temple shook faintly in time to it. This place is on very high ground. While it wouldn't be flooded, it'll be bad news if it gets struck by lightning. Ren Miao said, "Dagua, why don't you wake them up, go somewhere else?" Before he could finish, silver-white lightning, accompanied by crushing thunder, lit the gallery itself, struck right at the roof on the Fox Immortal Temple. Ren Miao, "Just what I'm saying." Yan Xiaohan swept into the temple like a tornado and pulled up Prince Qi. He said loudly, "Everyone, get up! Run!" The next moment, something tightened over the back of his neck, and he and Prince Qi were yanked away by a powerful force, thrown clear of the incense table. Almost at the same time, snow-bright lightning pierced the ceiling, shattering the hall's divine statue with a rumble. The ceiling beam snapped and came crashing down in the place where Yan Xiaohan had just been standing. Everyone was dumbfounded. My goodness. Well, if you're looking for a divine symbol. Okay. Sorry if I'm a little raspy tonight. Still good. Chapter 49. Prince Qi sat up dizzily. What's going on? Yan Xiaohan, meanwhile, was looking suspiciously at the person behind them. Ren Miao held his club in his left hand, frowning as he flexed his right hand. He seemed to have twisted his wrist with a sudden exertion of strength. Noticing Yan Xiaohan's gaze, he raised his head and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry. I was anxious. I hope I didn't hurt you. That club of his had been next to Yan Xiaohan before. The two of them had just been standing at the door together, and Yan Xiaohan had gone to save Prince Qi, while Ren Miao had gone to get the club. The distances to the two places were about equal, but he had still been able to push away Yan Xiaohan and Prince Qi before the ceiling beam collapsed. Never mind his frightening strength, that speed coming and going alone wasn't something an ordinary person was capable of. His movements and reactions were even faster than Yan Xiaohan's. But in that case, why, when he had come in, had Yan Xiaohan easily been able to get close to him and snatch his bundle? Either his skills had suddenly erupted at the moment of danger, or else he had been deliberately playing weak to take them in. The divine statue had been charred black by the lightning strike and broken to pieces. Ren Miao walked over and prodded at it with a club. He said, "It isn't safe in the temple. Who knows whether—" He remembered his crow's mouth prediction from earlier and swallowed the rest of his words. "Forget it," he said. "Let's just get out." Yan Xiaohan silently helped Prince Qi out. Strange to say, after they went, the thunder gradually quieted and the dense clouds parted. After that great bolt of lightning had come down, even the rain stopped bit by bit. Everyone raised their heads and looked into the sky, doubtful and confused, and with an inexplicable reverence. There was even someone who knelt on the spot and silently recited Buddhist scripture. Prince Qi hadn't panicked in the face of death. He fixed his clothes and hair and bowed deeply to Ren Miao. He said, "Thank you for coming to the rescue." Ren Miao was leaning on his club with one hand. He used the other hand to cover his head with his bamboo hat and carelessly said, smiling, "There's nothing to it. If you hadn't taken me in to begin with, this wouldn't have happened afterwards. When it comes to predestination and coincidence, who can rightly say?" Yan Xiaohan said, "Are you leaving?" Ren Miao picked up his horse's reins. "The rain has stopped, and the temple has been destroyed. If I don't go now, am I going to wait around for the next wave of bolts of lightning from the heavens?" He mounted nimbly and saluted everyone. Loudly, he said, "Everyone, we will meet again one day. See you in Qingshou City." Having said this, he spurred his horse and headed off, leaving with a swagger without so much as a look back. Prince Qi said, sighing, "What a miraculous encounter." Yan Xiaohan narrowed his right eye imperceptibly. The doubts in his mind hadn't disappeared. He watched that tall, slender figure disappearing into the distance. He kept thinking that this wasn't over. Early the next morning, they arrived exhausted at a nearby village to borrow shelter from the local commoners. This place was called Shishan village, falling under the jurisdiction of Jiangshou's Kuwangfeng County. The ways were rustic. With guests arriving from outside, the village head and clan elders welcomed them enthusiastically, not only finding them a place to stay, but also having their families bring all kinds of foodstuff. Prince Qi couldn't hold out and fell asleep. Yan Xiaohan took a nap. He was still concerned about last night's events, so after waking up, he went to ask the locals about the Fox Immortal Temple outside the village. There were elderly people who still remembered that temple. They said that a fox immortal had worked a miracle, warning the villagers in advance of a flood so they could avoid it, but having revealed the designs of heaven, the immortal had incurred a heavenly tribulation and been struck dead by lightning. The locals had built a temple to worship the fox immortal, but it seemed that the immortal had worked no more miracles after that, so the temple had gradually fallen into disuse. That bolt of lightning last night had evidently been outside of human power, but it had precisely struck the divine statue. That was too much of a coincidence. Could it really have been some warning from heaven? The legend said that the fox had incurred a heavenly tribulation by revealing the designs of heaven. Then what heavenly design had that bolt of lightning been foretelling? He was just lost in thought when a knock suddenly came from the door. Someone in the courtyard said, "Is there anyone there? I'm just passing by. I wonder if I could stay the night here?" There was a creak as the door opened wide. Beside the door, Lord Yan's expressionless cold face appeared. "Hey!" Ren Miao lifted his bamboo hat and said in surprise, "It's you again. Well met, well met." There wasn't a single sign on Yan Xiaohan's face that he thought this meeting would go well. He coldly said, "Well met." "It's fate, ineffable." Sighing with emotion, Ren Miao tied his horse up in the courtyard and familiarly walked inside. "Been riding half the night. I'm dead beat. Big brother, do me a favor. Lend me this room of yours and let me sleep." Yan Xiaohan didn't budge and didn't yield. He said, "No." "What?" "I'm a married man," he said. "It's inappropriate for me to stay in a room with someone else. Why don't you go pick up somewhere else to stay?" "Wait, what?" said Ren Miao. "I'm a full-grown man. What am I going to do to you? Are you afraid of your wife?" Yan Xiaohan said, "My wife is a man. Forgive me." Ren Miao was silent. All right. He waved a hand helplessly. "I'll go find somewhere else. Honestly." Unable to express himself, Ren Miao left. Yan Xiaohan walked out the door and went to where Prince Qi was staying, seeing that he hadn't woken up yet. He told the subordinates and attendants to be on alert and protect Prince Qi, while he himself took a turn throughout the whole village. He saw that Ren Miao had been put up in the woodshed of the house next door. Then he went around behind the village. Farmers were working in the paddy field in the distance. Children were frolicking. Women were gathering by the water, washing clothes and rinsing rice. It seemed as ordinary and quiet as could be. Perhaps he was being paranoid, but that bolt of lightning that had nearly fallen on his head clung to his mind like his shadow. Yan Xiaohan wandered around aimlessly. By the time he realized that he had taken a wrong turn, he was already standing in front of the village's memorial hall. The memorial hall was an important place. It would be violating taboo for an outsider to barge in. Yan Xiaohan had turned, about to go, when his overly sensitive ears caught a trace of unusual noise. There seemed to be people having a whispered conversation behind the building. A few words had just happened to leak out and be overheard by him. "With the outsiders here, tonight's sacrificial ceremony." The voice came closer and closer. Yan Xiaohan had a thought. He leapt as lightly as a swallow, just like a floating sheet of paper. He silently climbed up to the eaves and disappeared in the shadows beneath them. The village head he had seen that morning walked out from behind the building with a lean young man. He was saying, "Guang Ping and the others can't wait until the 15th. We'll do it tonight. Have the women add some drugs to the food to knock them out. Tomorrow we'll drag them out. All we need is for them not to get in the way. To my eyes, those people all seem to be dressed in top-grade silks. We'll be able to turn up quite a lot of nice things in their luggage." Yan Xiaohan understood that these people were planning to drug them and do some pilfering, but he didn't understand what they meant by the sacrificial ceremony. This seemed to be a ritual that only people belonging to this village could participate in, but even if they were offering sacrifices to ghosts and gods, what were they on about it that couldn't be revealed? What was there about it that couldn't be revealed to others? Then there was that bit about "can't wait until the 15th. What did that mean? When the two of them had gone into the distance, Yan Xiaohan leapt down from the roof, landing as lightly as a cat. He stood up straight and was just planning to slip away without anyone being the wiser when he stopped in his tracks and abruptly turned his head, just happening to meet a pair of black eyes at the end of a corridor. The memorial hall was dark to begin with, and that person was hidden behind a corridor pillar, only a pair of pitch-black eyes like drops of ink showing. He didn't speak either, only stared fixedly at him. A chill instantly went up Yan Xiaohan's spine, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He steadied his steps and met his eyes as calmly as possible. The thought flashed through his mind to simply kill this witness to avoid a disturbance. He had one hand behind his back. The knife hidden in his sleeve had already slid into his palm. Just then, the person suddenly leapt up from behind the pillar, gave him a last look, and turned to run off with a patter. This turned out to be a small child young enough to have loose hair. With Yan Xiaohan's skills, if he only wanted to, killing that child on the spot wouldn't have posed any difficulty. It was just that when he ought to have struck, his practically non-existent compassion suddenly acted up. Ultimately, he didn't toss the knife in his hand. Everyone said that after getting married, a person steeped in iniquity would develop some scruples, and become more restrained in conduct. Yan Xiaohan hadn't experienced it before, but now he vividly sensed that there was another force outside of the urge to kill stopping him. Involuntarily, he thought of Fu Shen. If he were in this situation, what choice would he make? Children were innocent. What need was there for ruthless slaughter? He always thought too highly of Fu Shen. This misapprehension made him soften his heart and stay his hand, and it brought about a series of unforeseen consequences for him. Supposing that Fu Shen really had been present, he certainly would have first knocked the child unconscious, then woken him with a slap. That threats and bribes would both be fair game. On being discovered doing something bad, even if you didn't kill the witness, you still had to make certain they would keep their mouth shut. How could you just let them go? Yan Xiaohan returned to the house where they were staying as though nothing were the matter. He woke Prince Qi and instructed him and the others not to touch any food or drink given to them by the village's people, and to set out for Kuangfang county at noon. The group busied themselves for a while, hitching their horses and stowing their luggage, getting everything cleaned up. Yan Xiaohan pretended to be in a hurry to get underway. He said goodbye to the village head and gave him some money. With money, you could command ghosts and demons. The village head had been a little suspicious to begin with, but seeing the money, he forgot everything and agreed at once. Yan Xiaohan accompanied the party part of the way. When they had completely left the boundaries of Zishan, maybe it's Zishan, village? He told Prince Key and the others to go on ahead, while he turned his horse's head around and silently returned to the forest outside of Zishan village. Only on leaving the village had he remembered that Ren Miao was staying in the house next door. In the dilapidated temple, even Yan Xiaohan's footsteps had woken him. Didn't make sense that he wouldn't have heard them making such a big fuss packing up. Wouldn't even have shown his face. Ren Miao had saved his life after all. Yan Xiaohan felt indebted to him. He ought to help him out when it was necessary. He thought to himself that once he had worked out what the sacrificial ceremony was, he could bring him along on his way out. Half a day later, dusk had fallen. Night was approaching. Scattered lanterns were lit in the village. Yan Xiaohan, hiding under cover of dusk, followed the road from the morning to slip into the village's memorial hall. The village head and the clan elderly people were all gathered outside of the memorial hall. In the inner courtyard were 3 flat carts decorated with fresh flowers and streamers of silk. On each cart lay a person in plain white clothes. It was dark, and Yan Xiaohan couldn't see these people's faces clearly. He didn't know whether they were dead or alive. He only heard one clan elder in the courtyard say, "Everything has been prepared appropriately. We should be on our way." Some young and middle-aged people came forward to push the carts. The whole party picked up white paper lanterns and slowly went out. The scene seemed to be a funeral for the dead. With dusk just on the point of ending, but not yet ended, it seemed exceptionally somber and strange. Yan Xiaohan wanted to follow them to investigate what was going on, but when he looked down, he saw that the child from before had once again popped out of somewhere. He was talking in the direction of the eaves where Yan Xiaohan had been hiding during the day. His mouth opened and closed, but he didn't make any sound. It turned out that he was mute. No one appeared. A confused expression appeared on the child's face. He repeated himself a few more times. Yan Xiaohan finally saw the shapes his mouth was making. He was saying, "Are you there?" Perhaps because the compassion he felt that morning had yet to fully fade, Yan Xiaohan, looking at that child, felt that there was no malice in him. And moreover, a child couldn't constitute a threat to a grown man like him. He pondered briefly, thought that he couldn't give up on a lead that had come to his door like this, and stepped out from his hiding place. He took a knife in his hand and calmly asked, "Are you looking for me?" The child turned his head abruptly, looking like a pale little ghost. Seeing him, he urgently made 2 gestures with his hands, indicating for him to follow. Yan Xiaohan didn't know what he wanted to tell him, so he let him lead the way. The 2 of them took turn after turn and came to a compound behind the memorial hall. The child led him in front of a building and pointed to a door so he would enter. Yan Xiaohan asked quietly, "Aren't you going in?" The child shook his head forcefully and showed him the traces of bruises on his arm. He made a hit gesture. Yan Xiaohan understood. This must be some important secret place for the village. Ordinary people couldn't enter without authorization, or else they would be beaten, like this child. He nodded and said, "Thank you." The child took a step back. Yan Xiaohan cocked an ear to listen, determined that there was no one in the building, and then gently pushed open the wooden door and stepped inside. One second. I am actually rather cold, so I'm going to put on my sweater. I have a feeling something interesting is about to happen. That's better. Chapter 50. It wasn't completely dark inside. There was a bit of faint yellow light glowing all around. There was no one inside and no frightening scene. Hang on. Yan Xiaohan took a few steps inside. His nostrils flared as he suddenly smelled an unusually sweet scent whose source he didn't know. Oh no. It's the drug. He froze briefly. Then an indescribable joy surged up to the top of his head, so hard he was instantly dizzy, his footing becoming unsteady. Then that sweet scent suddenly became denser, like hot oil ladled over a fire, making the flames explode, the heat rising. All the blood in his body began to boil. Visible blood vessels crept over his eyes. A raging fire seemed to be burning in the pit of his stomach. His lower body reared its head in an immediate reaction. With a clang, the knife in his hand fell to the ground. His body was like a damaged cage on the point of breaking, unable to contain the agitation and endless, inexhaustible lust. Yan Xiaohan bit the tip of his tongue and staggered towards the door, but the door that had just been opened at a touch now been tightly locked from the outside. All his muscles convulsed constantly, his fingertips trembling too hard to obey his commands. His body was at the highest peak of excitement, but he didn't even have the strength to break down the door. A trap from start to finish. The mute child who had led the way had been a snare arranged for his benefit. The sweet scent enveloped him like something living, twining, wandering over his limbs and his whole body. The darkness before his eyes became flash after flash of grotesque and marvelous dream. With the last thread of clarity set on fire by the flames of desire, Yan Xiaohan suddenly remembered during the major case of the murdered Jinwu guard, while inspecting the white dew powder, how a whole courtyard of Feilong guards had been affected. Shen Yisei had said that the drug would give a person an experience more blissful than bliss itself. Why would there be white dew powder in a remote mountain village over 1,000 li from the capital? But this bone-chilling thought didn't last long. Soon he could no longer think about it. His thoughts were chaotic and jumbled, now flying up to the clouds, now seeming to have been dropped into a fog. Yan Xiaohan at last slid slowly to the ground with his back against the wall and closed his eyes, his chest undulating violently, the sound of his breathing becoming more and more urgent. He gritted his teeth, holding back the moans that wanted to slip from his mouth. Savage veins rose on the backs of his hands. Big beads of sweat trickled from the hair at his temples to the corners of his eyes. But at that moment he was defeated by desire, and he finally couldn't resist. Shuddering, he called out, "Jing Yuan." Meanwhile, at the other end of the village, Ren Miao woke up and found that everyone had taken off. He was so hungry his legs were weak. His head spinning, he went to the kitchen and found a bun and nibbled on it, washing it down with cold water. When he had finished eating, he patted the crumbs off his hands and went to Yan Xiaohan's courtyard to get his horse. He was just about to follow their party to Guangfang County when, for some reason, his heart suddenly lurched. It was hard to describe this feeling. It was like a premonition, and it also seemed to be an inexplicable tremor coming from a string obscenely tied to him. He looked around suspiciously and, hesitating, walked a few steps further into the town. When he had just left the rear courtyard, he saw a child who couldn't even come up to his hip come out from behind a building. The two of them saw each other. Both froze. Before Ren Miao could move, the child turned in a panic and ran off. It was all right before he ran, but once he did run, it immediately seemed like he had a guilty conscience. Ren Miao was in fact much faster than Yan Xiaohan. He casually picked up a small stone off the ground and tossed it easily with his fingertips. There was a whiz as it soared through the air, and the child was hit in the back of the knee, falling face first in the dirt with a thump. Red Meow reached back and pulled out the club he wielded with such facility, and picked the child up with it, then shook him in the air. Thinking he was being genial, he said, "Why are you running?" The child shook like chaff being sifted. Red Meow said, smiling brightly, "Go on. You acted like you had seen a ghost when you saw me. What shameful things have you been up to?" The child couldn't speak. Tears quickly welled up in his eyes. He looked rather pitiful. But this stone-hearted man wasn't moved in the least. Seeing that he didn't answer, he walked up to the nearby well, carrying him and dangling him over the mouth of the well. "You won't talk? Then you can go down there and wait. There's no one in your village now anyways, and by the time they get back, you'll most likely have dissolved." The child stared blankly at him, then looked down at the pitch-black mouth of the well underneath his feet. He burst into tears. "Will you be good now?" Red Meow said in satisfaction. "Where have they all gone? Point the way." The child wailed. Ren Meow's original intention had been to ask him where the villagers had gone, but he didn't hear him clearly and thought he had been found out by Yan Xiaohan's accomplice. So he'd led him all the way to that house, sobbing. Ren Meow shook him off the club, then took a rough measure of the lock on the door. Then without another word, he brought the club down on it. A sharp wind was accompanied by an earth-shattering boom. The heavy brass club smashed the lock to pulp, along with half the door. The mute child was dumbfounded. He suspected that this blackened club of being some peerless divine weapon that could break gold and jade. When the door broke, the sweet swell inside escaped. Red Meow raised his sleeve and held his breath. On the principle of better you than me, he grabbed the child and tossed him inside. A half-grown child couldn't bear so much dense white dew powder. He was instantly knocked unconscious. Seeing this, Ren Meow was even more loath to act rashly. He stood upwind, covering his nose. Only when most of the smell had dispersed did he cautiously walk in over the broken door. As soon as he walked in, he saw the person curled up in extreme pain in the corner. Moonlight like white silk flowed in through the broken doorway, lighting up the disorder covering the ground. Yan Xiaohan had been disturbed by the boom. Reacting sluggishly, he raised his head. His blood was about to boil away from how hard he was trying to endure. From neck down, his skin was unusually warm and flushed. His eyes were unfocused, and cold sweat was constantly rolling from the hair at his temples, pouring over his cheeks and lining the bright red rims of his eyes, making his face look tear-stained. The newcomer had his back to the light, his face hidden in the night. The tall, slender figure unexpectedly accorded with his memories. He thought he was seeing an illusion. Dazedly, he said, "Jing Yuan." Ren Meow silently uttered several profanities and strode towards him. But before his hand could touch Yan Xiaohan, the latter gave a sudden start, as if he had suddenly recognized his face, and also as if the night wind had awakened his reason. His slack gaze focused again. Somewhere he found the strength to wave away his hand. "Stand back," panting, he hoarsely said. "Don't touch me." He had at some point gotten back the knife he had dropped on the ground. There was a bit of silver light between Yan Xiaohan's fingers. He raised the knife and stabbed at his own right arm. In a flash, Ren Meow finally understood what the scene before his eyes meant. He immediately raised a hand and jabbed at the acupoint on Yan Xiaohan's wrist and wrestled the knife out of his hand. With his other hand, he aimed a slanting chop at the side of his neck. Yan Xiaohan's head fell instantly sideways. He had lost consciousness instantly, falling limp into his arms. That knife had nearly stabbed him in the heart. Ren Miao let out a breath of relief and wiped away the sweat on Yan Xiaohan's face. He bent down, ready to carry Yan Xiaohan away over his shoulder. Unexpectedly, as soon as their bodies touched, he felt something poke his shoulder. What the fuck? Awkwardly carrying him over his shoulder, he left the room and threw Yan Xiaohan onto his horse's back, then leapt up onto the horse after him, hugging him in front of himself. He spurred on the horse and went racing in the direction of Kuangfeng town. Sorry that my voice is starting to get kind of rough. In Kuangfeng County, the joyful journey's in. The old doctor Ren Miao had dragged out of his house, finished taking Yan Xiaohan's pulse, pinched his beard, and said with an attitude of having seen it all, "It's not a serious illness. He's just taken too much of this drug. There's no need to be anxious. Go to the pleasure district and find him someone to relieve it. Once the effects of the drug are played out, naturally, he'll be better." Ren Miao asked, "What drug has he taken?" "Autumn White Night." The old doctor shook his head. "I've seen many patients like this. They're just out for some pleasure. This drug forms an addiction as soon as it's taken. It'll be hard going in the future." Just what the fuck was Autumn Night White supposed to be? Is it the same thing as White Dew powder? Why was it also addictive? There was no time to make detailed inquiries about all these questions. The critical matter lay in bed. Ren Miao didn't have time to listen to the doctor sigh about the decline of public morals. "In my day, things were different." His head aching, he said, "Enough. I understand. So we'll leave it at this for tonight. Tomorrow I'll bring him to you to be examined." The old doctor took his fee and tottered out. Ren Miao looked at Yan Xiaohan, laid out on the bed with his brow tightly furrowed in unbearable pain. He sighed wearily. He sat at the table and took a small bottle of lotion from his inner pocket and carefully applied it to his face while looking in the mirror. The time it takes to drink a cup of tea slowly peeled a human skin mask from his face. What is it with, human skin masks? The bronze mirror reflected the cold and handsome countenance of the young general. "Called it." Put the mask in front of the mirror, got up, and walked over to the bed. He raised a hand and flicked the acupoint on Yan Xiaohan's chest. The person he had knocked unconscious before coughed twice, then slowly woke up. Fu Shen sat down on the edge of the bed and raised the hem of his clothes, revealing a pair of black boots that went up to mid-thigh. Kinky. These boots were a product of the Beiyuan Army's armament department. At the top of the boots, the knees, and the ankles, there were specially made mechanical clasps. At the calves were 6 black iron braces, and the soles were pieced together from iron plates, all linked together with ingenious gears. Once you had put them on, there was no need for your feet and legs to take weight. From the knee down, walking would be entirely carried out by machinery instead. That sounds so cool. This was a transportation tool that the armaments department had developed especially for him after he had been injured. Even a real cripple with absolutely no sensation below the knee could still walk as normal after putting on these boots, never mind a half-cripple like Fu Shen, who had mostly recovered. At the villa, he had received the boots delivered by people dispatched by Yu Qiaoting. He had thought that he didn't have anything else to do, so he might as well go tease Yan Xiaohan. He had gotten excited, so he had changed his appearance and adopted a false name and gone to chase him to Jingshou. He really ought to thank the skilled craftsmen of the Beiyuan cavalry and his own sudden flash of inspiration. It was fortunate that he had come chasing after him, or else, after this mission was carried out, his household would have been broken up. He undid several clasps and stepped out of the boots. He took a towel from the basin next to him and wrung it out, then plastered it to Yan Xiaohan's face. That's enough. Why don't you wipe away those tears? It's a pitiful sight. A scalding hot, trembling hand grabbed his wrist. Yan Xiaohan suspected he had gone completely mad. He was staring at him fixedly in disbelief, not even daring to blink, as if afraid that he would vanish the next moment. He whispered, Jing Yuan. Yes? Fu Shen finished wiping his face, then wiped his neck and hands. Gently he said, It's me. Am I dreaming? Fu Shen tapped maliciously on a certain unspeakable spot, drawing a shudder from him, and said with a smirk, A spring dream, I suppose? For anyone not knowing, spring dream is decisive strength. As he waved the knife at his own arm, with some inexplicable heartache mixed in. He had developed a hatred against all of Shishan village. Supposing no one had rescued Yan Xiaohan, he would have spent a whole night in that awful place. After getting out, he probably would have been ruined. If he had struggled free and run away, relieving the efforts of the drug would have been a big problem. Fortunately, it was Fu Shen who had come in time, and it was Fu Shen who was with him now. Wretched thing like this between husband and wife could, with a stretch, amount to a love game. Yeah, accidentally getting drugged and then being like, oh, thank God, it's my husband. How did you... Fu Shen lowered the bed curtain on both sides, turned, and got into bed. As he undid his belt, he said, Are you still engaging in idle chat with me at a time like this? His fingertips inadvertently touched Yan Xiaohan's exposed skin. He seemed to have been burned. His whole body trembled. Then some invisible cage broke with a rumble. The beast uttered a long cry. There was a tightness around Fu Shen's waist as he was embraced and bore down into the pillow. Wild, scalding kisses rained down on him like a flood. Jing Yuan, I'm going to lose my mind. With his reason in its death throes, Yan Xiaohan spoke into Fu Shen's ears, his heavy panting breaking his sentence into 3 parts. So if I hurt you, make sure to push me away. Fu Shen turned his head and kissed his face and raised a hand to knead the sweat-soaked back of his neck. Quietly consoling, he said, It's all right. Don't be scared. I'm here. They, even with this shit, they're just so good. Oh, I guess that's it. I guess that's where we're ending today. Because that was the end of chapter 50, and we're reading 45 to 50. Yeah. All right. And I guess we do a fade to black. All right. So a lot happened. I guess we're kind of setting up the ground plot for the drug den aspects. Maybe we'll see kind of what the village ritual was this coming Thursday. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good start to it. We had a little bit of relationship tomfoolery. A baby was born. And then, yeah, really just kind of setting up for timeline. Maybe something will happen to Prince Key. Really kind of introducing him. But I am excited for Thursday because I think that's probably when we'll really get into the meat and potatoes of what's going on. Or at least start to. This seemed like the appetizer course. And yay, they are so cute. But yeah. I'm kind of a little surprised it ended. We got through that pretty quickly today, even with some of our technical issues. But I had fun. I hope you guys had some fun. And I guess I'll see you Thursday. Good night, everybody. It'll be an early night tonight. Sorry again about those technical issues, and it was a little loud here tonight, so I hope it came across clearly. Good night, friends. Oh, actually, before that, instead of, like, you're still all my beautiful blossom blooms and buds, but I'm thinking when I want to abbreviate it, I'm going to call you all my bees, like my bumblebees. We'll see. All right, on that note, good night.